The airport cafe was bright and echoing with the soft hum of morning chatter when the moment that changed everything unfolded. A tall man in a faded gray jacket sat near the window, his worn backpack by his feet and a little girl sleeping against his arm. He was staring absently at the runway outside when a young woman's sharp voice sliced through the air. Her German words were fast, frustrated, and clearly directed at him. Everyone turned to look. The man's face remained calm, though tired, his eyes revealing years of quiet struggle. And then, he replied softly, in flawless German. The cafe went silent. The young woman froze, her breath caught halfway between shock and realization. She hadn't expected him to understand. She hadn't expected him to reply. His name was Ethan Moore, a 37-year-old single father from Manchester, England. Life had not been kind to him. Once an aspiring architect, he had lost his wife, Clara, in a tragic car accident 3 years ago. Since then, Ethan's world had narrowed down to one purpose: raising his 5-year-old daughter, Mia. With Clara gone, and debts piling up, he took on cleaning jobs, night shifts, and whatever work came his way. The dream of designing homes had vanished into the haze of survival. But this trip to Germany was supposed to be different. Ethan wasn't there for vacation or business. He was there for Mia's surgery. She had a heart condition that required a specialist based in Munich. Ethan had sold nearly everything, his old car, his tools, even his laptop, to afford the flight and the consultation. He hadn't told anyone back home how desperate he really was. To the world, he was just another man doing his best. That morning, as he sat in the airport cafe waiting for the connecting flight, Ethan's eyes burned from exhaustion. He hadn't slept in 2 days. Mia was dozing peacefully beside him, her little pink backpack shaped like a bunny resting on her lap. She looked so fragile that it scared him sometimes. But when she smiled, the world still seemed possible. At the counter, a young woman in a crisp white coat and designer heels was arguing with the barista in German. Her name was Annika Weiss, heiress to one of Munich's oldest family-owned hotel chains. At 25, she had everything: wealth, beauty, and power, but little patience. That morning, her frustration wasn't just about coffee. She had just learned that her flight was delayed, her assistant had misplaced her passport, and her brother had once again embarrassed the family with his reckless behavior. She had no idea that this day would unravel all her assumptions about people, and about herself. When Annika turned from the counter, her eyes fell on Ethan and Mia. The girl's bunny backpack had toppled to the floor, spilling out a small teddy bear. Annika instinctively bent to pick it up, but before she could, Ethan leaned down, careful not to wake Mia, and picked it up first. Their eyes met for a fleeting second, his calm and tired, hers sharp and guarded. She gave a small nod, muttering something under her breath in German. She thought he wouldn't understand. But he did. Every word. "You shouldn't bring a child like that traveling in such conditions," she had said softly, unaware her voice carried. "It's irresponsible." Ethan froze. For a moment, pain crossed his face, but he said nothing. He didn't owe anyone an explanation. Still, when Annika noticed his silence and dismissive expression, something inside her snapped. Maybe it was stress, maybe pride, but she repeated the words, louder this time, not cruelly, just bluntly. And then Ethan turned, his voice quiet but firm. "I understand every word you said." The cafe went still. The German heiress, who had grown up in a world of status and language barriers, suddenly found herself speechless. His accent was precise, Berlin German, fluent, confident. Annika blinked, unsure what to say. Ethan stood, adjusting his daughter's blanket, and continued softly in German, "She's sick. I sold everything to bring her here for surgery. I'm not irresponsible. I'm a father." Annika's face flushed. Her words, meant as a careless observation, now hung in the air like a weight she couldn't lift. I didn't know," she murmured, her eyes darting toward the child. He nodded once, without anger, and sat down again. The silence that followed was thick and uncomfortable. For the rest of that hour, Annika couldn't stop glancing at them, the tired man and his daughter. Something about their quiet togetherness unsettled her. She was used to people rushing, demanding, proving, but not this gentle patience. When Mia stirred awake and smiled weakly up at her father, whispering, "Daddy, are we in Germany now?" Annika's throat tightened. She looked away. When their flight was finally announced, Annika noticed Ethan struggling to carry both his duffel and Mia's things. Without thinking, she walked over. "Here," she said, holding out her hand. "Let me help." He hesitated but nodded. She picked up the small bunny backpack, the same one she had criticized minutes earlier, and carried it quietly as they walked toward the gate. Neither spoke much during the flight, but something had shifted between them, something fragile and human. In Munich, Ethan checked into a small, low-cost guest house near the hospital. Annika, feeling strangely restless, couldn't forget the encounter. She asked her driver to stop by the hospital later that afternoon, under the pretense of checking on a family friend. She found Ethan sitting alone in the waiting area, staring at a vending machine coffee cup like it held the secrets of the universe. Mia was in surgery. Annika didn't know why she sat beside him, or why she stayed there for hours. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was empathy. But as she listened to him talk, hesitant at first, then more open, she saw not just a man, but a father whose love burned brighter than despair. Ethan told her about Clara. About how he used to sketch houses on napkins for his daughter, promising that one day he'd build one for her. About the nights when he'd tuck her in, whispering, "We'll get through this, love. We always do." And about the endless jobs, the loneliness, and the small victories, like when Mia laughed again after months of silence. Annika listened in silence, her eyes welling up. She had spent her life around people who measured worth in money and appearances. But here was a man who measured life in moments and sacrifices. Hours later, when the doctor emerged with a smile and said the surgery had gone well, Ethan broke down. Not loudly, but in a quiet, trembling exhale that seemed to release years of fear. Annika stood by, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. For the first time in a long while, she felt something pure, something real. Over the next few days, Annika visited often. She brought warm meals, a coloring book for Mia, and even helped with hospital paperwork. Ethan tried to refuse her kindness, but she wouldn't listen. "Let me do this," she said once. "It's the least I can do." As Mia healed, her bright laughter returned, filling the sterile hospital room with light. She took an instant liking to Annika, calling her Miss Sunshine, because, as she said, "You always bring good things when you come." Ethan couldn't help but smile. Somewhere between the hospital visits, shared coffee cups, and late-night walks through Munich's quiet streets, a quiet bond grew between the man who had lost everything and the woman who had never really known what she had. Annika invited Ethan and Mia to stay a few more days before flying back, offering a suite at her family's hotel. Ethan hesitated, feeling out of place among the polished marble floors and chandeliers, but Mia's delighted giggle convinced him. For once, he allowed himself to rest. One afternoon, Annika found Ethan sitting on the balcony sketching the city skyline. "You still draw," she said softly. He nodded. "It's the one thing I never gave up." She hesitated, then asked, "Why didn't you ever tell anyone what you were going through?" Ethan looked out at the horizon. "Because people see what they want to see. A tired man, a messy life, an old jacket. They don't see the love behind it." Annika felt that like a mirror shattering inside her. For years, she had lived behind her last name, hiding her loneliness behind meetings and perfection. And now, this man, with nothing, had shown her everything she'd been missing. When it was finally time for Ethan and Mia to return home, Annika drove them to the airport herself. The air was crisp, sunlight bouncing off the glass